covering in session 1 the overview of the Nigeria Identity Project. So please join me in welcoming again Mr. David Akoji, the Director of Special Duties and State Operations at the National Orientation Agency for this session. Please, a round of applause for him. Let's encourage him.
The presentation that I'll be sharing with us this morning is an overview of the Nigerian Identity Project. The purpose of this is to provide a foreground so that we understand the context within which this learning engagement is happening here at this period. And I'm going to make it interactive, even as I'll be conscious of time. What that means is that I'll be asking 1 or 2 questions, which would also help in the elaboration of what we intend to be learned during the course of this engagement today. So the first question I want to ask is, what is your personal identity? Anyone who wants to provide an answer can just indicate by raise of the hand, as we spoke about in the rules of engagement during this course. If I ask you the question, what is your identity? Would you like to provide us an answer? Do we know what our identity are as individuals? So what is your identity? Let's not be shy. You want to speak? Okay, I'll bring the mic. Okay, give her the mic.
It's my name. And then the values
Correct.
I have. Thank you.
Absolutely. A round of applause for her. What else constitutes your identity, apart from your name and the values that you hold? What else? Yes, there's a hand raised here.
Yes, sir. Wing Commander J.M. Chua. I believe my identity are the qualities that uniquely identify me as an individual.
Correct. That's part of it. I saw some hands raised over there too. Okay, you can keep, yes.
Yes, also I think your identity first and foremost indicates where you come from. Like if you see some people by the tribal marks on their faces, you can easily say this is where they come from.
Okay.
I'm a Yoruba man, and I think anybody that sees me will see that I'm dressed like a Yoruba man. It's also part of the national identity.
So symbols.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about. The mark, the cloth, these are symbols, that add to the identity of an individual. I saw some hands raised over there. He spoke what you wanted to speak about? Okay then. So give him the mic.
My name is Group Captain Chris Erundu. Well, my identity constitutes my belief system, indicating what I believe in. For instance, I believe in 2 religions. I believe in Christianity and in Islam. Thank you.
So you see, identity is extremely important for the individual, for the family, for the community, and then for the nation, for a group of people. How is identity important for the family? I'm sure in the various communities where we come from, people can say, no, this family, they are very good people. Now, good is broad. If you break it down, what do you mean by this family is good? The people are able to explain to you the attributes that are associated with such a family, and that makes the community to define that family as a good family, and that becomes their identity. Similarly, there are families that have produced thieves, dishonest people. And so when you look at such families, you say, no, these families, they steal goats, they steal people's chickens and cows in the community. And that becomes a negative identity for the family. So families that are conscious of this make deliberate efforts to ensure that they cultivate the right kind of identity for their family. And this is passed from generation to generation to generation. Can you see how important identity is? In what way is identity important to a community? There are communities that people are afraid to enter because of their practices. Because terrible things that they do, they are not welcoming to visitors. If you get lost and you enter such a community, the likelihood of you coming out alive is very low. There are communities across Africa and the rest of the world. And so those people form a kind of identity for themselves. In Nigeria, as a country, we are said to be the happiest people in the world, in spite of all our challenges. They also say that we are very welcoming to visitors. When international visitors come to Nigeria, they live very happy. You know, that's a part of our identity. So now we're talking about national identity. What is the identity that the Americans have carved for themselves? Can anybody share? Any component, any element of the American identity that you have noticed that you can share with us? Please give her the mic. Be on the watch out.
A dangerous society for the youth especially.
Okay. That's one perspective. Anybody else has another perspective?
Okay, since I have a mic already, I can say, I could say something. I think America, they capture an image of freedom.
Freedom.
They optimize freedom.
Freedom.
Everyone.
That's a component of the American dream, what they call the American dream. Yes.
Okay, they respect, they value their citizens wherever they are.
That's an identity. Wherever an American is, if he runs into trouble, America will come there and collect their citizen. Yes, please give him the mic. Give the general the mic.
I think the Americans also believe in their religion, Christianity, as encapsulated in on their currency, in God we trust. And another thing is their national power, as represented by their military.
Absolutely. Correct. Have you ever watched a war film where America lost? You haven't. So what does that imply? It means that even the movie industry supports the narrative about the identity of the American, of America. Yes.
The love of the nation and the belief that it's only one America. God bless Nigeria.
Patriotism. All right, I thank you very much. Now we want to ask ourselves the question, what does a national identity mean? What does it mean? A national identity is the sense of belonging and shared values that define a nation and its people. It is the collective we that distinguishes one nation from another. And in the course of the answers that we have given to these questions, we have spoken to that collective we, you know, as it relates to a nation. What are the key components of a nation's identity? It includes shared history. What is our shared history as Nigerians, irrespective of our religion, tribe, region, and other dividing lines? Our shared history is we emerged from colonialism. And that's a history that we share with almost all the countries in Africa except for Ethiopia, I think. Another key component is culture. And then you have values. And then you have symbols. Now we want to ask ourselves the question, why does it matter to have a national identity? And some of the answers we gave spoke to this. National identity fosters unity and cohesion among citizens of a country. It provides a sense of pride and belonging in our country. It also guides national development and decision making. And then it represents the nation's image globally. The identity we project as Nigeria is what the global community will perceive us as. Now, we got independence in 1960, right? Since 1960 to date, have we come together to identify a set of, attributes, and then to promote those, and then to set in place the framework for building a Nigerian identity? We have made several feeble efforts in the past. And if I call out some of those efforts, you will remember them. Good people, great nation. Do the right thing, change begins with, do the right thing, transform Nigeria. And then change begins with me. And then people begin to ask, why must it begin with me? Why doesn't it begin with you? Why doesn't it begin with the leaders? Why must change begin with us, the followers? These are some of the questions we have encountered. So in the current dispensation, we have interrogated all the efforts that we have made in the past. And by the way, let me just tell you a bit. National Orientation Agency has a mandate in this regard. National Orientation Agency has a mandate to communicate government policies, programs, and activities, to sensitize citizens to embrace better values, better behaviors, to encourage democracy as the preferred system of governance, to encourage cohesion and national integration. All of these are embedded in our mandate, as part in the law that established the National Orientation Agency. And so over the years, we have come out with some of these slogans and attempts that I described to you. And yet, Nigeria is asking, what is National Orientation Agency doing? That happened even here today. I was listening carefully, when the discussions around expectations from the course was going on. I think one of the officers said, I want to hear what National Orientation Agency is doing. So we did some bit of research and then interrogated some of the causes why these previous efforts may not have succeeded the way we wanted them to succeed. And we found out that there were about 2 or 3 missing links, gaps. Now, one of those gaps is the fact that we were always focused on the people, and the people didn't feel that they should be the one to lead change. They felt that leading change should come from leadership. So that was a gap. And so they didn't take you serious at all. When you go on campaign on sensitization, on awareness and all of that, and they say, no, take your campaign to the leaders first. That was one gap. The second gap we noticed was that previous campaigns were too strongly driven by slogans. And slogans have a lifespan. They don't outlive the life of the champions of such slogans. So when you say, do the right thing, transform Nigeria, and transform Nigeria was the political campaign slogan of President Jonathan at the time. When President Jonathan is no longer in office, what happens? It naturally fizzles out. When you say change begins with me, and then we can argue why not with you. Change was the presidential campaign slogan of President Muhammadu Buhari in his first tenure. And so when Buhari is no longer there, what happens? That slogan fizzles out. So we realize that enduring change cannot be driven by slogans. It has to be driven by embedding the elements of the desired change in institutions. So it becomes institutional culture. And institutional culture will outlive me. They will outlive the current president. And they will outlive anyone else that is holding leadership position today. That's one other thing we discovered. That we cannot run this by slogans. That we need to be more strategic and deep. That we need to find ways of encapsulating this in frameworks and formats that can be embedded in institutions so that they become institutional culture and people take ownership of it. What I'm talking to you about now is how we put the building blocks towards achieving a Nigerian identity. So that's what we discovered. The other thing we discovered, again, resonated from feedbacks that we're getting in our many sensitization and awareness campaigns. What was this feedback? I think that also played out in the course of the conversation when we're introducing ourselves and talking about expectations. Someone mentioned the youths. Say the youth don't believe in our country. They don't believe in what we are doing. But then I ask you a question. Do they believe in America? Oh, yes. That's why you have the Japa syndrome. That is why you have the Japa syndrome. So how have we come to a place where our youth believe in America more than they believe in their own country? So there's a challenge. How is it? And then let me foreground that with this intervention. A lot of the violence, the killings that we see happening in this country, do you know that it happens in America too? In worse forms, in some instances. A person can be depressed, wake up from his sleep, and enter a kindergarten school and open fire on little children. And if you ask why, say because he is depressed. And this happens frequently. The challenge of discrimination, does it happen in America? Oh, yes, it does. Discrimination along racial lines. This happens, even though in the past, every now and then, they open their doors and get immigrants from different countries to improve on their diversity, while we here are not appreciating our own God-given diversity. So how do we get the attention of the youth? To recognize the fact that it is a patriotic duty to love your country. How do we get them to understand this? Then you want to find out, how did America get its youth to love America? And how did they succeed in getting even our own youths to love their country more than they love our country? It did not happen by happenstance. There were deliberate efforts. There were deliberate things that were done. And we identified one critical component of those deliberate steps that America took. At the nurturing stage, of young children, they spend so many hours watching cartoons. And they build their impressions of cities around the world, of values, of people from the cartoons that they watch. All of us who are parents here will testify to this fact. Recently, the Director General invited children from some primary schools to the headquarters, and we received them to engage with them. And they sat around like this. And one after the other, he was asking them, who is your hero? And that child said, Spider-Man. He asked the other one, who is your hero? And I said, Iron Man. He asked the other one, who is your... And they kept calling the names of all these characters in the cartoon. Have you ever heard about New York City? Oh, yes. They have skyscrapers, they have this, they do that. That child could describe New York City, but he cannot describe Abakaliki or Mekbudi or Owerri, depending on which part of the country he. So what do we do about this? Does Nigeria have heroes? Do we? We have plenty of heroes. Many of us are not following closely the sacrifices that our military are doing on behalf of our country. You know, we're not following the stories of individuals who gave their life on the battlefield so that we can be safe. A lot of us have become specialists in criticizing. Our eyes cannot see some of the positive things, and many of them, that are happening around the country. Very recently, we lost a gallant military officer on the field of battle against the enemies of this country. And the enemies had the gumption to video it and post in the social media. I'm talking about General Uba. That's the most recent, and I'm talking at officer level now. We have lost many, who are other ranks. There are stories to tell. If we begin to tell some of these stories professionally, it can be more captivating than the story of Rambo. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, at the National Orientation Agency, we have identified this as a critical nurturing point to develop national Nigerian identity. So, what have we done? In crafting the Nigerian identity, we knew that we had to start from the level of policy at the highest level. And so the National Orientation Agency took a proposal through the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation to the Federal Executive Council. The Federal Executive Council is where the president, all the ministers, the secretary to government of the federation, all those people sit to make decisions for the country. And one of the things we put in our proposal is we wanted the Federal Executive Council to approve that 70% of the cartoon content that our children watch in this country must be local. They must tell our stories. They must promote our local heroes. There are heroes in civil society. There are heroes in the media, journalists who died in active service. There are heroes in the civil service. We have heroes in every sphere of human endeavor in this country, but their stories are not being told. And so our children are learning more about foreign heroes than they are about our heroes. And so they are embracing the identity that other countries have imposed on us through this media, social media, traditional media, and all of that. And so once we took this decision, and the federal government, Federal Executive Council approved it, we said, okay, so now we have created a space. We've expanded it. How do you feel it? And I started with my young son at home, 8 years old. And I told him, very soon, we're going to stop you from watching Spider-Man, Iron Man, and all these men that you have been watching for some years now. And you are going to start watching our own heroes. And he said, who are our heroes? So now for us to be able to compete, because if you are taking something that has quality and value, you must replace it with something that has quality and value if you are going to achieve the desired objective. So how do we translate this into opportunities? Entrepreneurial opportunities, business opportunities, job opportunities for our people. Because 70% is huge. Nigeria is a country of about 250 million people, the larger percentage of which are youths. There are people in their 20s who still watch cartoons to this very day. 30s. You know? So how do we do that? So we began to interrogate our local setting. And we found out that there are fantastic cartoon animators in Nigeria who are Nigerians. You know, that they even have an association of animators, National Association of Animators in Nigeria. So we began to engage with them. And the first product that came out of that engagement is the cartoon that National Orientation Agency is running now on channels, on TVC, on AIT, NTA, all this platform. And the protagonist in that cartoon is called Captain Excellence. Maybe you haven't watched it, but it's already running. You know? Captain Excellence is teaching our children how to preserve power. That's more functional than Spider-Man who jumps from one building to another building. And then our children go and buy the costume. And if you are living in a duplex, they climb upstairs and they want to jump from that place, you know, to the ground. We're changing the narrative, you know, and we're engaging. We also found out that because of the evolution in technology today, it's really not difficult to develop cartoons. With AI, you can impute your parameters and your criteria, and it will produce a cartoon that speaks about your village in a manner that has equal quality and is equally catching to the children. You know, so we just needed to wake up to all of this. And then to encourage our children, sons and daughters who are already in the cartoon industry to see things differently, you know. So that's one of the critical things that we have done as we're putting the building blocks toward developing a Nigerian identity. I hope you can see where we're going with this. Now, the underlying thing in national identity is national values. National values. So, Nigeria is a very diverse country. Many cultures, many languages, more than 500 languages, you know, different peoples, but we're all Nigerians. How do you come about a set of values that is accepted by the Christian, by the cultural worshipper, by the Muslim, by the Yoruba, by the Idoma, by the Birom, by the Tiv, by the Fulani, by all of us? How do you come about it? It's not something that can come about by happenstance. So the National Orientation Agency assembled a group of people under the supervision of the Minister of Information and National Orientation and under the directive of the President. From civil society, from women groups, from the academia, you know, from traditional institutions, we assembled all of these people. And we say, produce for us a set of values that will be accepted by everybody. That does not negate the religion or culture of any one of us. 7 of those values. That's what we want. And they worked for some months and came up with 7 of those values. And if you interrogate those values, because we will look at them as we go on, those values are actually universal. You know? One of those values is integrity. Our keynote speaker spoke about it, integrity. Is integrity acceptable in Islam? Is it acceptable in Christianity? Is it acceptable in Igbo land? Is it acceptable in Yoruba land? So it means that we all respect that value of integrity. And so we can pick that and say, okay, this is a national value. So that's part of what we've done. And then they did that work and came up with 7 of those values. And we have called those 7 values the citizens' codes. The citizens' codes. Now, why do we need to have a citizens' code? I am a Christian. If somebody walks up to me and says, "What's your identity?" Part of my identity is that I am a Christian. You know? And then you can go ahead and ask, are you a good Christian? It's not enough to be a Christian. Are you a good Christian? If you say you are a good Christian or a good Muslim, how do I interrogate that claim? I can interrogate that claim by going to see what the Bible says about a good Christian or what the Quran says about a good Muslim. And then I benchmark what I see you displaying, exhibiting, with what is written in the book. So if I don't see a match between what you are displaying and what is written in the book that you subscribe to, I can say you are not a good Muslim. If you say, why? I say, because Quran says this, and I'm not seeing it in you. Say you are a Christian, you are not a good Christian. Why? Because the Bible says this, and I'm not seeing you exhibit that. So part of what we want to achieve in the mind of the global community is a distinction between a Nigerian and a good Nigerian, in the same fashion as you have good Christians and bad Christians, good Muslims. Now, to achieve that, then you must have the benchmark. Who is a good Nigerian? A good Nigerian is a person who exhibits the 7 citizens' codes. This is where we're going with this. So that's how we came about the National Values Charter. And the National Values Charter is the driving framework for the Nigerian Identity Project. Why do we call it a charter? You know what a charter means? It's an agreement. A charter is an agreement. So in this context, we're answering that question that Nigerians have always asked us: what about the leaders? Do you understand what I'm saying? All of us here are leaders in some respect. So Nigerians have always asked us, why are you always talking to us? What about the leaders? So today, we have a National Values Charter as the driving framework for the Nigerian Identity Project. So the National Values Charter represents the responsibilities of leaders and the responsibilities of citizens. Now, if you don't think about it carefully, you will be thinking that there's a clear distinction and dividing line. Now, let me explain something here. In Nigeria, you have to be a citizen first before you are a leader. What does that imply? It means you also have responsibilities in the citizens' codes, but you have additional responsibility as a leader, which is embedded in what we call the Nigeria Promise, similar to the American Dream. So you see, 2 pillars: the Nigeria Promise and the Citizens' Codes. Now, we are calling it the Nigeria Promise because we have learned from experience. It is not a President Tinubu promise. It's not an APC promise. It's a promise that our country, Nigeria, is making to every citizen, including those yet to be born. And that promise is to be kept by leaders, irrespective of where they come from. Do you understand where we're going with this? So, that is the Nigeria promise. And I need to break it down a little more so that you have better understanding. Is there a difference between Nigeria, my country, your country, and the leaders in position and in office today? Many of us don't see that distinction. But the Americans do. That's why they are building their country the way they are building it. They know that President Trump will go after 4 years. And if they have a chance at a different kind of president, that they would see a different type and style of leadership, but that America, their country, endures, is always there. Nigeria, since 1960, is our country and will always be our country so long as we have the courage to defend it against the enemies of our country collectively. That task is not left to the military alone. We all have a role to play. So today we're saying that leaders mean leaders in government, leaders in the market, leaders at the motor park, leaders among masons, leaders among POP and floor tile makers, leaders in every space. And that is how you capture everyone and then achieve the objective that you want to achieve. You are focused only on leaders in office today. By the time they leave, a new set of people go there, then you start all over again. The strategy must be all-encompassing. So that if any of us here become senator, minister, or whatever tomorrow, we have had this conversation and we know what the obligations are. We also know what the Nigeria promise is. So that's the Nigeria promise, 7 of them. And we didn't just sit in our offices and come up with this. Again, it was an output of stakeholder contributions and engagements. One of those stakeholders who helped out with this has a rich background in civil society and then in politics also. This is Dr. Otive Igbuzo, who runs, the name of his organization is Center for Leadership Development and Strategy. You know, it's very popular in civil society circles. Dr. Igbuzo also rose to be Chief of Staff to the Deputy Senate President of our country. He was part of the people who worked to produce the Nigerian Identity document, and he will be speaking with you virtually in the course of this engagement. Later today, right, Ayuba? Igbuzo's presentation is later today. Then you would also be listening to Professor Adeniyi from Bayes University. You know, he was an academician who also contributed to this. We didn't just sit in our office and come up with it. So the Nigeria promise is equality, democracy, entrepreneurship and employment, peace and security, inclusivity, freedom and justice, and meritocracy. And all of these issues resonated in the keynote address. So, whose responsibility is it to ensure equality? It is the responsibility of the chairman at Motor Park, who will not give the ton that belongs to another person to his town's man because he's from the same village with him. You know? Democracy. The democracy education has been embedded in schools' curriculum as we speak, so that from that childhood, children are learning. And you find that in our schools today, if they are going to choose a head of class, it's democratic. They set up an election panel, and then the children vote. You know, what does that do? It helps people to aspire to also model character that reflects responsibility in leadership so that they can be voted when the time, you know, comes. Then entrepreneurship and employment. We're saying that the actions we take must encourage equity in employment. It must encourage people to become entrepreneurs because government cannot provide jobs for everybody. Developed countries are driven by entrepreneurs. The Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, and we have their equivalent in this country, I can assure you of that. They just need the necessary platform and encouragement to express themselves fully in this regard. So that's the Nigeria promise. Now, whose responsibility is it to keep the Nigeria promise? All of us here. Every one of us. It is the responsibility of your firstborn in your family to keep the Nigeria promise amongst his siblings. It is the responsibility of the head prefect in our schools. It is the responsibility of the director. It is the responsibility of the chief executive, of the president, of all the governors. So I spoke about institutionalization. Let me just quickly talk, because my time is running out, about those institutionalization policies, because you'll be encountering actions around those areas as we progress in this country. One of the things we have done is we have gotten the Federal Executive Council to approve that if you are appointed into any leadership position in this country, you must go through this course that you guys are going through now before you assume office. That's institutionalization. So going forward, elected and appointed officials will go through a class like this and they will hear it. Not all of them will convert, but they will have it on their conscience, and all of them would have heard it. Recently, the president has announced the appointment of ambassadors. We're going to put them through this class, so that as they go out, they represent us in the Nigerian identity, and they know what the elements of the Nigerian identity are. They also know what their responsibilities are under the Nigeria Promise and the Citizens Code. The other thing we have done with regards to institutionalization is we have embedded the Nigerian Identity Project and the National Values Charter in schools' curriculum. We worked with the Minister of Education. And today, from primaries 1 to SS3, our children will be learning these things. We have set up a joint committee with NUC, Nigerian Universities Commission. And I'm leading that committee from the NOA side. And we were formally inaugurated 2 weeks ago. And the purpose is to embed it in university curriculum. We have already started working with Nigerian Board for Technical Education. They are the ones that are responsible for colleges of education and polytechnics. We're putting it in their curriculum. Last week, I was touring the country, visiting training schools for Nigerian Correctional Service. And I was sharing this with them, and we have talked to them. They put it in their training curriculum. We have heard that the Chief of Army Staff is talking about reviewing the training curriculum of the Army. We are going to meet him. Today, if Nigeria is playing football or any other sport in any part of the world, National Orientation Agency will go there. It's a platform to tell our story. The real Nigerians, you know? So that because you accidentally are always encountering those Nigerians who go and tell a negative story about us does not mean that that's who we are. You know? We were at this female African football championships that just ended. Went with our flags, went with our T-shirts, our coat of arms and everything, and we told our story on those platforms, in those stages. We're going to continue to do that so that the world will see a different narrative, you know, concerning us. We're engaging with NYSC on this. We're also engaging with ITF, you know, and all of them. Now, a critical part of our national identity, somebody spoke about him dressed like a Yoruba person. And true, that's an identity of a Yoruba person. So for our country, Our national identity also lies in our national symbols. The flag, the green, white, green. In this country, we have not paid much attention to our flag, our national symbols. You see people flying all shades of green. This one you see on this table, it is green, isn't it? Somebody will go and sew this, put a white in between, and put the same green at the back, or even a different type of green. And they say they are flying it as Nigerian flag. No, it is not. Flags of countries of the world are identified by color codes. Because green, for instance, is not only Nigeria that has green on its flag. So how do you differentiate the Nigerian green from the green on another country's flag? It's by color codes. You understand? And for Nigeria, it's Emerald 2.0. But nobody takes care of these things. Is careful about it. We just think people just put any green and any white. You could very well be flying the flag of a different country, and in your mind you think you are flying Nigeria's flag. So we're promoting the right colors, the right usage of all our national symbols. We're doing this from primary to secondary all the way. It's part of what we're going to be teaching. Part of what we're embedding in the curriculum. So to build a nation that is functional for all of us, we must model national values daily. It's extremely important. And today we know what the national values are. We must model them. We must support Nigeria reintegration and civic education. This, the keynote paper also spoke about. We must apply the values that we have learned about today in decision making. We must resolve dilemmas with integrity and fairness, not favoritism. So this is where we're headed. And this is the reason why we're having all of these engagements. And this is the reason why today we are seated at the fourth in the series of the National Values and Leadership course. So you can see that it's a very serious thing. The future of our country depends on how we succeed with this. And we all have roles to play. We all have a responsibility. I thank you very much.
For more information, call 070-373-83444 or 080-311-37715. Visit www.nationalvaluesandleadership.com to register.